So good morning. The first thing I want to do is thank you all so much for being here. So excited it didn't rain. As Tom said, I'm Tracy Cook, ProKids Executive Director, and like you, someone introduced me to ProKids. I began at ProKids in 1992 as a CASA volunteer, a court-appointed special advocate. Now, my parents taught me that justice is worth fighting for, and I went to law school to learn how to be a lawyer, but it was volunteering here at ProKids that truly taught me how to advocate. A year later, I joined the staff as a ProKids attorney. Now, as a CASA volunteer, I was assigned to speak up for children who'd been abused and neglected so severely that they'd been taken from their families and placed in foster care. My role was to get to know them, understand their needs, and advocate for them. I was privileged to work closely with ProKids staff, including my volunteer supervisor known as a CASA manager and a ProKids attorney. And together, we were what's called a ProKids advocacy team. Now, our first job was to make sure that the children were safe. Then we needed to make sure they had access to services to help them heal. And what they're healing from is trauma. Trauma from being abused and neglected, but also the trauma from being taken from the only family they'd ever known. Now, we needed to advocate passionately and persuasively on behalf of our children's best interests before Hamilton County Juvenile Court, which oversees all the children in the child protection system. But ultimately, what we were doing was making recommendations to the court about who should raise them. So as you can imagine, in the 20-some years I've been doing this work has allowed me to witness children with broken bodies and spirits, but also the amazing power of resilience. This year's a little different because I've never heard such serious concern about our community from so many people. Concern about what is happening right now and what this means for the future, for our children and for our grandchildren. We are facing some brutal truths as a community, especially about the number of children living in poverty today. And even more so because abuse and neglect and poverty are completely intertwined, leaving kids so traumatized it affects every aspect of their lives. So I'll give you an example. When kids enter school with this kind of toxic stress, they struggle to pay attention, to participate, and to learn. Now, why is that? Well, it's because they're distracted. Mental health professionals sometimes tell us about how these children will actually continuously scan the faces in the room, looking for changes of expression that mean they might be about to be hit. The skill that allowed them to survive in an abusive environment becomes their kryptonite in school. And if they aren't reading by third grade, they're likely not going to graduate. And then the cycle continues. Now, people have also shared with me how sickened they are about recent child deaths. From the mother sentenced last week to 11 years in prison for killing her child, who was only 2 years old, with her boyfriend, to the undernourished 5-year-old boy who just passed in the hospital after being tied up in a blanket and beaten over a 24-hour period because he dared to reach for food. I can't stand it, and I bet you can't either. Now, growing up, my father always said, you're either part of the problem or part of the solution. We can't look away from abused and neglected children and hope someone else will fix it. There are no sidelines to watch from. It's painful and heartbreaking to see these tragic stories, but the truth is we are not helpless. We have the power to save them. And as a community right now, we're in the fight of our life. Now, what's at the core of all that is beautiful and all that is tragic is family. Your family, my family. Family is just a block from here and families miles away. It is our families together that make our community. And our community is the true legacy we leave for our kids. Now, these brutal facts might sound overwhelming, but each of us can start by shrinking the problem. When you were coming here today, imagine you saw a crying 1-year-old alone on the side of the street. Thoughts would rush through your mind. What is happening? Is he going to step into the street? With your mind racing and your heart pounding, you would stop your car, get out, and rescue him. You would never say to yourself, "This is overwhelming. There's nothing I can do. I don't know where to begin." There is no question you would rush to act. So how do we unleash the power of our urgent human response for a child who just happens to be behind closed doors? ProKids exists because of children right here in Cincinnati who've been abused and neglected so severely they've entered the foster care system. Now in Hamilton County alone, that's about 3,000 children each year. These are the worst of the worst situations out of the about 16,000 children annually who receive help from the county due to maltreatment. ProKids' vision is a safe, permanent, and nurturing home for every child. We work to achieve this vision by mobilizing the community to break this vicious cycle of abuse and neglect. We recruit, train, and support community volunteers to speak up for them and help guide them to safe environments where they can truly thrive. Since 1981, ProKids has served thousands of children. Now, CASA volunteers are amazing people. They bring gifts of time, common sense, and caring. They're on the front line every day, visiting our children, calling social workers, therapists, and teachers, and working with all these individuals to create plans to get our children to the safe, permanent nurturing homes they deserve. ProKids volunteers and staff collaborate with all sorts of busy, hardworking professionals from every system that touches a child's life. And we work with partners to create alliances within the child protection system to maximize outcomes for our children. We want everyone to pull together for our kids. The reward of this work is truly awesome. A wonderful thing is going to happen very soon for a beautiful 2-year-old girl we serve. Jordan is the 4th child of a young mother who grew up in and out of foster care herself in another county. Jordan's older siblings were taken permanently from their mother, who was living in total chaos and violence. And then Jordan was born and placed in foster care. Her father was unknown. Her mother said she wanted to get help so she could parent her daughter. Now, when Jordan's case came to ProKids, a CASA named Amy was assigned to speak up for this baby girl's best interests. Other parties in the case wanted to immediately return Jordan to her mother. Amy, her CASA manager, and the ProKids attorney decided to subpoena records from the county where the other children were taken from their mother. And based on these records and interviews of mother's former caseworker, they asked the court to keep Jordan in foster care and to order a mental health assessment and services for her mother. Now, Jordan's CASA volunteer, Amy, visited Jordan regularly, making sure she was thriving in foster care, observed interaction between the baby and her mother during visits, and really encouraged Jordan's mother to fully participate in her services. At one point, the mother took off with the baby after getting into a physical altercation with someone supervising her visit with Jordan, and she took Jordan to the very relatives who abused and neglected her as a child. Now, Amy and her CASA manager immediately advocated for restricted visitation, and when it became clear that Jordan's mother was not going to live differently, Amy and her CASA manager advocated to free Jordan for adoption by her loving foster care family. Tomorrow morning, I have the privilege of attending Jordan's adoption finalization, where she will become officially part of her forever family. Now, when you see the cycle of abuse and neglect this up close, you have empathy for those who have been raised in it. We wish we had the chance to fight for Jordan's mom when she was a child. We didn't have that opportunity. So now we are here for Jordan, to fight for her, to help break the cycle. And I'm here to say thank you to the ProKids community for being here for Jordan too, and also to invite others to stand up for our children. It was inspiring this morning to see so many community members stand up and say, "I'm for the child." After they took the oath, you may have noticed they delivered a picture to some of the tables here today. It's a picture of a child. Now, why didn't everyone get one? Because there are so many foster care children right here still waiting for our community's help. And as long as these children are seen simply as the responsibility of the system, and we don't see them as our own, children like Jordan won't have the safe, permanent, nurturing home she deserves. Why? Because the foster care system was designed to meet the needs of children for a short time and not to raise them, and it is overburdened. There have been deep cuts and they couldn't have come at a worse time when more kids are entering the system. So there are so many unanswered questions today. For instance, about the children, how will this trauma affect them who are entering the system? Will they self-destruct? Will they lash out? Or will they heal? Will we take action today? Or will we leave it to the next generation to deal with the aftermath? The truth is, it's not an agency, it's not a system that cares for children. It's a committed community. Now, since we began telling you ProKids' story and asking for your help, you've shown us what's possible. Thanks to our Friends of Children's Society members who've made a multi-year pledge to ProKids and all of our supporters, we've been able to add additional dedicated and passionate staff members and volunteers, and we deeply appreciate your support. Our supporters understand that mobilizing the community is highly effective. Some examples. We doubled the number of children we serve. Last year, 181 CASA volunteers spoke up for 648 children. And best of all, abuse and neglect stopped for 99% of them. This is a rate we've maintained now for almost 2 decades. But there's a lot more to do. Our urgent goal is to get the community's help to all the children in need. Reaching this vision means breaking a cycle of abuse and neglect that has spanned generations, but also creating a new cycle of growing up safe and confident. But how do we get there? We get there with more people spreading the word about our children, with more volunteers stepping forward to serve, and with more staff to train and guide them, and to build stronger alliances to share what works for our kids. Doesn't every single child deserve to have someone say, I am for this child? Would all the CASAs in the room please stand? I just want to say thank you so very much for giving our children a voice. I hope you will join them today and say, I am for the child. Thank you.